Dr. Elena Vasquez was drinking her morning coffee when the entire galaxy went quiet. She sat in her small office at the Sol Defense Coalition headquarters, watching the communication screens that normally buzzed with messages from hundreds of worlds. The screens showed green lights for every star system humanity had contact with. Then, one by one, the lights started turning red. Elena put down her coffee cup and leaned forward. Red lights meant lost contact. 1 or 2 red lights happened sometimes when equipment broke down, but she was watching dozens of them change color in just a few minutes. Computer, run a diagnostic on all communication systems, she said. All systems are working normally, the computer replied in its calm voice. Elena's hands moved quickly over her keyboard. She was humanity's best expert on alien languages, and part of her job was monitoring communications from other species. The Nexus Collective had built an amazing network that connected every civilized world in the galaxy. Messages could travel instantly between stars that were thousands of light years apart. But now the messages were stopping. Her door burst open. Captain James Park rushed in, his face pale. "Elena, are you seeing this? The communication network is going down," she said, still typing. "I'm trying to figure out why." "It's not just going down," James said. "Listen to this." He pressed a button on his tablet. Voices filled the room. Alien voices, speaking in languages Elena knew well. But these voices were different from the usual calm reports and trade discussions. These voices were screaming. Elena listened to the panicked words in Altarian. "The darkness comes for us. They have returned." A Centauri voice shouted, "All fleets are lost. The Devourers are here." Then a vegan transmission, barely audible through static. "Tell the younger races. Run. Hide. They consume everything." The voices cut off one by one until only silence remained. Elena stared at the dead screens. In 50 years since humanity had joined the galactic community, nothing like this had ever happened. The Nexus Collective was ancient and powerful. Their technology was so advanced that most species, including humans, barely understood how it worked. "What are Devourers?" James asked. Elena shook her head. "I've never heard that word used by any species. But the way they said it..." She shivered. They were terrified. Admiral Chen Wei arrived 30 minutes later with the emergency council. Elena had worked with the Admiral before. He was a practical man who had fought in humanity's last major war against the Titan colonies. He didn't scare easily. But today, Admiral Chen looked worried. "Report," he said simply. Elena stood up and pointed at the wall display. At 0847 hours, the Galactic Communication Network began failing. We received fragments of panic transmissions from multiple species before contact was lost. Based on what I heard, something called the Devourers has attacked or invaded other star systems. "How many systems have we lost contact with?" the Admiral asked. "All of them," Elena said quietly. "Every single star system outside our own solar system is now silent." The room went very quiet. Councillor Martinez, the elected leader of Earth's government, spoke first. "Could this be some kind of technical problem? A solar storm? Or cosmic phenomenon?" "No," Elena said. "The transmissions I heard were clearly distress calls. This was an attack." Admiral Chen walked to the large window that looked out at Earth's orbital defense platforms. "What do our long-range sensors show?" Lieutenant Kim spoke up from her station. "Sir, we're detecting unusual readings from multiple sectors. Several star systems that should be showing normal energy signatures are dark." "Dark how?" "No energy readings at all, sir. It's like the stars are still there but everything else is gone." Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. Elena knew he was thinking about humanity's position in the galaxy. Humans were newcomers compared to other species. The Altarians had been traveling between stars for over 5,000 years. The Centauri Federation was twice as old as that. These were civilizations with technology and experience that made human achievements look primitive. If something was powerful enough to defeat all of them, what are our options? Councillor Martinez asked. "We can do what the other species apparently did," Admiral Chen said. We can hide. Shut down all transmissions. Power down our space stations. And hope whatever is out there doesn't notice us. And if it does notice us anyway? James asked. The Admiral smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Then we fight. Elena looked around the room. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Humanity had good ships and brave crews, but they were still learning how to build the advanced technology other species used. In a straight fight against something that could defeat the entire galactic community, humans would probably lose. But Elena knew something about her species that the aliens might not understand. Humans had been fighting impossible odds for their entire history. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have wiped them out. Every time, they had found a way to adapt and keep going. "Admiral," she said, "I request permission to analyze the alien transmissions more carefully. There might be clues about what we're facing." "Granted. What else do you need?" "Access to the historical archives. If these devourers have appeared before, there might be records." Admiral Chen nodded. "Do it. And Elena, work fast. If other species with thousands of years of experience are running scared, we need to understand why." As the meeting ended and people hurried to their tasks, Elena stayed at her desk. She played the alien transmissions again and again, studying every word. The fear in those voices was real. These were civilizations that had survived wars, natural disasters, and countless challenges. Whatever had frightened them was unlike anything they had faced before, but Elena felt something else as she listened. Beneath her worry and fear, she felt something that might have surprised the fleeing aliens. She felt curious. She wanted to understand what these devourers were and how they worked, because understanding an enemy was the first step to defeating it. Elena opened her files and began to work. Somewhere in the galaxy, something was hunting civilizations. But humanity had been hunters too, long before they reached the stars, and humans had never learned how to be prey. Outside her window, Earth's defensive fleets moved into position around the planet. They were preparing for the worst. But Elena was preparing for something else. She was preparing to fight back. Commander Sarah Martinez had volunteered for dangerous missions before, but none like this. Her stealth ship, the Prometheus, was flying toward what used to be Nexus Prime, the center of galactic civilization. Every expert said it was suicide. Admiral Chen had ordered the mission anyway. "Contact in 10 minutes, her pilot announced. Lieutenant Torres was young but skilled, and his hands were steady on the controls despite what they might find. Sarah looked at her small crew. Dr. Kim was their technology expert, brought along to understand any alien systems they might discover. Sergeant Rodriguez was their security specialist, though everyone knew that if they met the devourers, weapons probably wouldn't help much. "Remember," Sarah said, "we're here to gather information, not to fight. If we see any signs of these devourers, we run immediately. Also, Creator." Through the ship's windows, they could see empty space where one of the galaxy's busiest trade routes used to be. Normally, hundreds of ships would be traveling between star systems. Now there was nothing. "Approaching Nexus Prime," Torres reported. The massive station appeared on their screens. Sarah had visited it twice before, as part of diplomatic missions. Nexus Prime was bigger than Earth's moon, with sections built by dozens of different species over thousands of years. It housed millions of beings, and contained the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. Now it looked dead. "I'm not detecting any life signs," Dr. Kim reported. "But the station is intact. No signs of weapons damage or explosions." "That's impossible," Sarah said. "A station that size doesn't just empty out." They docked carefully at one of the smaller airlocks. Sarah's team put on their environmental suits and entered the station. The corridors that should have been full of aliens from hundreds of worlds were completely empty, but the lights were on. The air systems were working. Everything looked normal, except for the total absence of life. "This is wrong," Sergeant Rodriguez muttered into his comm. "Where are the bodies? If there was an attack, where are the signs of fighting?" They made their way to the central command center. Dr. Kim's equipment beeped as they walked. I'm detecting residual energy patterns, she said. Something powerful was here recently. But the energy signature is strange. The command center was a vast room filled with control stations designed for beings of different sizes and shapes. At the center was the Nexus AI, the collective intelligence that managed communication for the entire galaxy. Sarah approached the main console carefully. The screen was still active, showing endless streams of data in languages she couldn't read. But as she watched, the data streams stopped, and new text appeared in simple human English. Warning. Survivors detected. Do not remain here. They will return. Sarah's heart began beating faster. Who are you? What happened to everyone? The text changed. I am what remains of the Nexus collective consciousness. The others, consumed. Not killed, consumed. Dr. Kim was recording everything. Consumed how? Not matter, not energy. Something deeper. They take the possibility itself. They make it so progress never happened. Hope never existed. Sarah felt cold. What are these devourers? Ancient. Return every 50,000 years. Previous cycles. Other galaxies. Always the same pattern. Civilization grows. Develops. Reaches peak. Then they come. How do they consume possibility? Dr. Kim asked. Hard to explain in simple terms. They exist in multiple time states. They defeat you by making victory impossible to imagine. Previous civilizations fought them. Lost, were made to have never existed. Sergeant Rodriguez was watching the entrances. Commander, we should go. This place feels wrong. But Sarah had more questions. How did you survive if everyone else was consumed? Backup systems, hidden protocols, designed to preserve some memory if primary consciousness failed. But I am fading. Soon I will forget too. Is there any way to fight them? The AI was quiet for a long moment. Then, new text appeared. Previous cycles, one species always tried to fight while others fled. Delayed the devourers long enough for survivors to escape to new galaxy. But fighting was always hopeless. Why hopeless? Devourers adapt, learn, grow stronger with each victory. Each species they consume adds to their power. They have consumed thousands of galaxies over millions of years. Dr. Kim looked up from her instruments. Commander, I'm detecting something approaching. Multiple large contacts, moving fast. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Devourers? Unknown, but they don't match any ship design in our database. The AI's text became urgent. Leave now. Do not let them detect you. Humans are unknown quantity. They may not have noticed your species yet. Sarah's team ran back toward their ship. Behind them, the AI's final message appeared on screens throughout the command center. Tell your people. Previous species had golden ages before the darkness came. You are different. You have always fought. That may matter. They reached the Prometheus just as Torres spotted the approaching ships. Commander. Those things are massive. Each one is bigger than our largest battleships. Get us out of here, Sarah ordered. As they fled through hyperspace, Dr. Kim analyzed the data they had collected. The energy readings from those ships, she said. They're not using any kind of propulsion we understand. It's like they're moving by changing the rules of physics around them. Sarah contacted Admiral Chen as soon as they were safely back in human space. She reported everything they had learned, including the AI's final message. So, these devourers have destroyed entire galaxies? The Admiral asked. According to the Nexus AI, yes, they've been doing this for millions of years. And every species that fought them lost. Every single one. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. What do you think, Commander? Should we hide, like the other species apparently did? Sarah thought about the empty station, the vanished civilizations, and the AI's warning. Then she thought about humanity's history. Humans had faced extinction events before, ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, wars. Every time, some humans had found a way to survive and rebuild. Sir, the AI said something interesting. It said previous species had golden ages before the Devourers came. But humans have never had a golden age. We've been fighting for survival since we first walked upright. You think that matters? I think it might. Every other species in the galaxy is more advanced than us. They've had thousands of years of peace and prosperity, but we're the species that crawled out of caves and decided we owned the sky. You're saying we should fight? Sarah nodded. I'm saying we might be the only species that doesn't know how to give up. Admiral Chen smiled. Commander, I want you to brief every ship captain in the fleet. Tell them what we're facing. Let them know that every expert says fighting is hopeless. And then we'll see what happens when something that always wins meets a species that never learned how to lose. Dr. Kim was still analyzing the data when Sarah found her later. What are you thinking? Sarah asked. The AI said the Devourers grow stronger by consuming possibility. But it also said they adapt and learn from each species they fight. So what happens when they try to adapt to a species that adapts faster? Humans have been changing and evolving our tactics for our entire history. We've never fought the same way twice. Sarah looked out at the stars where human ships were already beginning to patrol. Somewhere out there, things that had destroyed countless civilizations were moving through space. They had never lost a war, but they had never fought humans before. Elena Vasquez had been working for 3 days straight, surviving on coffee and determination. Her office was covered with printouts, data tablets, and translation matrices. She had been digging through every record humanity had collected since joining the galactic community, looking for any mention of the Devourers. What she found changed everything. Admiral Chen, she said when he answered her emergency call. I need you to see this immediately. The Admiral arrived within minutes, along with Captain Park and several other senior officers. Elena's normally organized office looked like a hurricane had hit it. I found references to the Devourers, she said without any greeting. Hidden in historical archives, mythology sections. Even children's stories from dozens of species. Admiral Chen looked at the scattered papers. What do they say? They all tell the same story, but from different angles. Every 50,000 years, something comes from outside the galaxy. It consumes civilizations, but not just by destroying them. It makes it so they never achieved anything important. Elena picked up a tablet and showed them a translation. This is from Altarian mythology. They call them the Erasers, beings that remove progress from existence. But look at this part. She highlighted a section of text. It says that in each cycle, one species always stands and fights while the others hide. That species always loses. But their sacrifice gives others time to escape. Escape where? Captain Park asked. To other galaxies. The survivors flee far enough away that the Devourers don't follow. Then they start over. Admiral Chen studied the text. How many cycles? Based on what I can piece together from different sources? At least 20. Maybe more. The Devourers have been doing this for over 1 million years. And the species that fights always loses? Elena nodded. Always. But Admiral, I found something else. Something important. She pulled up another file. This is from the Centauri archives. It mentions that the fighting species usually has some trait that makes them difficult to consume, something about their nature that the Devourers have trouble adapting to. What kind of trait? It's not clear. But every species mentions that the fighters are different somehow. Unpredictable. Stubborn. Unwilling to accept defeat, even when it's obvious. Captain Park laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sounds familiar. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked up at Elena. Doctor, I want you to prepare a message. We're going to send it on every frequency we can reach. What kind of message? We're going to tell the galaxy that humanity is here. 2 hours later, every human communication station in the solar system was broadcasting the same message. Elena had translated it into every alien language she knew. Radio telescopes, hyperspace transmitters, even simple emergency beacons carried the words across space. The message was simple. This is humanity of Sol 3. We hear you're afraid. We hear something's hunting you. We hear the stars are dying. Well, We've been fighting death since we figured out how to make fire. We don't know how to run, and we never learned how to hide. We're coming. Hold on. The response was immediate. Hidden transmitters that had been silent for weeks suddenly came to life. The first reply came from a Centauri bunker, buried deep inside an asteroid. Humans are insane. The devourers cannot be fought. More messages followed. Foolish young species, you will only make them stronger. Do not come here. Save yourselves while you can. The cycle always ends the same way. Run while you still have time. Quote, but some messages were different. We remember what it was like to hope. Perhaps this time will be different. If you truly intend to fight, we will watch. Elena monitored the communications throughout the day. The pattern was clear. Older species urged humanity to flee, while younger ones seemed curious about human intentions. Then something unexpected happened. Dr. Kim, who had been studying the recovered Nexus data, made a discovery. Elena, she called from her workstation. Look at this. I've been analyzing the energy patterns we detected at Nexus Prime, comparing them to references in the historical archives. Elena looked at the data. What am I seeing? The devourers don't just consume possibility by destroying it. They actually feed on the acceptance of defeat. When a civilization gives up hope, they become easier to consume. You mean the act of surrendering makes them stronger? Exactly. But there's more. According to these patterns, they have trouble processing resistance that doesn't follow expected patterns. Previous species fought conventional wars, fleets against fleets, weapons against weapons. They all lost. The same way. Elena felt excitement building. But humans don't fight conventional wars. We're the species that used guerrilla tactics against superior forces. We're the ones who kept fighting even when logic said we should surrender. We've never had a proper way of doing anything. Admiral Chen joined them as Dr. Kim continued her explanation. Sir, I think the reason previous species always lost is that they fought the way civilized beings are supposed to fight. They had rules, protocols, expected strategies. And humans? Humans are the species that invented asymmetric warfare. We're the ones who figured out that sometimes the best strategy is to do something so unexpected that the enemy can't adapt to it. Admiral Chen smiled. Are you saying we should fight dirty? I'm saying we should fight like humans. That evening, Elena received a message that made her stop working entirely. It came through an emergency channel, heavily encrypted, from somewhere in the Vega system. Young humans, this is First Scholar Zethkri of the Vegan Archives. We have been watching your transmissions. You claim you will fight the devourers. This is impossible. But we remember stories our ancestors told. Stories of a species that would come from a small yellow star. A species that fought entropy itself. Elena called Admiral Chen immediately. Sir, you need to see this. The message continued. Our legends speak of the stubborn ones who would arrive when all seemed lost. Beings who did not understand that some battles cannot be won. We thought it was just mythology. But now, Admiral Chen asked. Elena read the final part. Now we wonder if our ancestors were telling us about you. If you truly intend to fight, we will help. We have hidden archives, ancient weapons, and most importantly, we have hope. More messages began arriving throughout the night. Species that had been hiding for weeks started emerging from their bunkers. Not all of them. Most remained hidden. But enough to matter. The Altarians offered their fast scout ships. The Centauri Federation promised technological support. Even some of the ancient species, being so old that most others considered them myths, sent careful messages of interest. By morning, something was happening that hadn't occurred in 50,000 years. Instead of fleeing separately, different species were starting to coordinate. They were remembering what it meant to work together against a common threat. This is unprecedented, Elena reported to the morning briefing. According to every historical record, previous cycles saw each species either fight alone or run away. No one ever organized a coordinated resistance. Why not? Admiral Chen asked. Because previous fighting species were trying to win through superior force or technology. They were competing with the Devourers on the Devourers' terms. And we're not? Elena smiled. Admiral, humans have never tried to win through superior anything. We win by being too stubborn to lose. Captain Park looked at the star charts, showing where human ships were already deploying. So, what's our strategy? Admiral Chen stood up. Our strategy is to do what humans do best. We're going to be so unreasonable, so persistent, and so absolutely unwilling to accept defeat that even cosmic forces of destruction won't know how to handle us. And if we lose, then we'll lose in such a spectacular and annoying way that the next species will know exactly how to beat them. Elena looked around the room at the faces of people preparing for an impossible war. These were humans, the species that had looked at a universe full of hostile conditions and decided to make it their home anyway. The Devourers were about to learn something that every asteroid, ice age, plague, and extinction event in Earth's history had already discovered. Humans were the universe's most persistent problem. The first battle between humanity and the Devourers happened at Wolf 359, a small star system that humans had chosen specifically because it was expendable. Admiral Chen wanted to learn how the enemy fought before risking important worlds. Captain Sarah Martinez commanded the human fleet from her flagship, the Defiance. 37 ships of various sizes accompanied her, each one carrying the best weapons and shields humanity could build. According to every simulation, they were about to be completely destroyed. Contact on sensors, Lieutenant Torres reported. Multiple large objects approaching from hyperspace. Sarah had seen the sensor readings from Nexus Prime, but actually watching the Devourers emerge into normal space was different. The ships, if they were ships, looked like pieces of space itself had been cut out and shaped into weapons. They didn't reflect light or emit energy in any way humans understood. Weapons range in 30 seconds. Sergeant Rodriguez called from the tactical station. All ships, open fire when ready, Sarah commanded. Human missiles and energy beams struck the Devourer vessels. For a moment, Sarah thought their weapons were having no effect at all. Then she realized something worse was happening. The energy from their weapons was being absorbed, making the enemy ships larger and more solid. They're feeding on our attacks, Dr. Kim reported from her science station. Every time we hit them, they grow stronger. The Devourers responded with weapons that didn't destroy ships so much as make them cease to exist. The frigate Marcus Aurelius simply vanished, along with its crew of 87 people. One moment it was there. The next moment, there was empty space. Evasive maneuvers, Sarah ordered. But the Devourer weapons weren't missiles or beams that could be avoided. They were more like changes in reality itself. The destroyer Lincoln disappeared next, then the cruiser Washington. Sarah watched her fleet being erased one ship at a time. Everything the experts had predicted was coming true. This was a massacre. But then something unexpected happened. Captain, Dr. Kim called out. The Devourers have stopped advancing. Sarah looked at her displays. The enemy ships were holding position, as if they were waiting for something. Why aren't they finishing us off? I'm detecting massive energy buildups in their vessels, Dr. Kim reported. But the energy patterns are confused. It's like they're trying to process something they don't understand. Sarah realized what was happening. They've never fought a species that kept attacking after losing most of their fleet. Every previous species had followed logical military doctrine. When faced with overwhelming force, they retreated to regroup or surrendered to minimize losses. But humans had different ideas about logic. All remaining ships, Sarah broadcast, continue the attack. Target their largest vessel. Captain, Lieutenant Torres said quietly. That's tactically insane. We can't hurt them, and they'll destroy us. Yes, Sarah agreed, but we're going to make them work for it. The remaining human ships closed in on the Devourer fleet, firing everything they had. Their weapons still couldn't damage the enemy. But something else was happening. The Devourers were having to use more energy to erase each ship, as if the simple act of human persistence was forcing them to work harder. When only the Defiance remained, Sarah opened a channel to Admiral Chen back at Earth. Admiral, I'm sending you all our battle data. The Devourers can be hurt, but not in any way we currently understand. They seem to have trouble processing illogical behavior. What do you recommend? Sarah looked at the 3 remaining Devourer ships approaching her position. I recommend we get more illogical. The Defiance was destroyed 4 minutes later, but not before Sarah had rammed it directly into the largest Devourer vessel. The collision didn't destroy the enemy ship, but it did something unprecedented. It forced the Devourer to expend massive amounts of energy to maintain its existence. Admiral Chen studied the battle data for 6 hours before calling his next briefing. The Devourers won, exactly as predicted, he told his staff. But they used 3 times more energy than they should have needed to destroy our fleet. What does that mean? Elena asked. It means Captain Martinez was right. They have trouble with illogical behavior. Every previous species fought them like a conventional enemy. They learned to counter conventional tactics perfectly. Dr. Kim looked up from her analysis. Admiral, I've been studying the energy readings from the battle. The Devourers weren't just destroying our ships. They were trying to understand why we kept fighting when logic said we should retreat. And they couldn't. Their entire existence is based on predictable patterns. Species develop, reach their peak, then either fight conventionally or surrender when faced with overwhelming force. But humans kept fighting even when it was obviously hopeless. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. So we confused them. More than that, we made them use extra energy trying to process our behavior. If we can do that on a large enough scale, Elena understood immediately. We can exhaust them. Exactly. The Devourers have consumed thousands of civilizations over millions of years. But they've never had to deal with a species that treats defeat as a learning experience instead of an ending. Admiral Chen activated the fleet communication system. All ship commanders, this is Admiral Chen. I'm transmitting the battle data from Wolf 359. Study it carefully. Captain Martinez and her crew discovered something important. The Devourers can be forced to work harder than they expect. Captain Park, who was commanding the defense of Mars, asked the obvious question. How do we use that information? How do we use that information? We're going to do something no previous species ever attempted. Instead of trying to beat them in conventional warfare, we're going to annoy them to death. The second battle happened 3 days later, when Devourer forces attacked the Jupiter orbital stations. This time, humanity was ready with new tactics. Instead of forming battle lines and fighting like a proper space navy, human ships scattered in all directions. Some ships attacked and retreated immediately. Others rammed enemy vessels and self-destructed. A few ships did nothing but broadcast Earth music at maximum volume. The Devourers spent hours trying to adapt to tactics that had no pattern or logic. They would prepare for a conventional attack, only to face ships that dropped cargo containers full of nuclear waste, and then fled. They would move to eliminate important targets, only to discover that humans had abandoned them to hide behind asteroids. Most importantly, human ships never fought the same way twice. The enemy is showing signs of frustration, Dr. Kim reported during the 3rd day of fighting. Their energy expenditure is increasing with each engagement. Frustration? Elena asked. Can cosmic forces of entropy feel frustrated? According to these readings, yes. They're having to constantly recalculate their strategies because we keep doing things that don't make tactical sense. The Jupiter battle lasted a week and ended with humanity losing most of their fleet again. But they had learned something crucial. The Devourers were not infinitely powerful. They could be forced to work harder than they wanted to. More importantly, something else was happening across the galaxy. Species that had been hiding began sending messages, not offering to fight, but asking for information about human tactics. The Altarians wanted to know how humans managed to continue attacking while retreating. The Centauri Federation asked for detailed analysis of illogical strategic doctrine. Most surprising of all, some species began leaving their bunkers to watch the battles. They didn't join the fighting, but they observed from distant systems, studying how humans waged war against the impossible. Admiral, Elena reported after analyzing communications intercepts. I think we're inspiring them. The other species? Yes. For 50,000 years, They've watched their civilizations get consumed by following the same patterns. Now they're seeing something they've never seen before. A species that loses battles, but refuses to lose the war. Admiral Chen looked at the casualty reports from their recent engagements. Thousands of humans had died, and they hadn't successfully destroyed a single devourer vessel. By any reasonable measure, humanity was losing badly, but something had changed in the galaxy. For the first time in 50,000 years, the devourers were facing not just one species that fought, but an entire galactic community that was remembering what it meant to resist. "How many more ships do we have?" Admiral Chen asked. "Enough for maybe 6 more major engagements," Captain Park reported. "And after that? After that, we start building new ones. We keep fighting until we figure out how to win." Admiral Chen nodded. The Devourers had won every war they had ever fought, but they had never fought a species that considered learning from defeat to be a victory in itself. Somewhere in space, ancient forces of entropy were discovering that humans were the universe's most persistent students. And the lesson humanity was teaching them was simple. Some problems just wouldn't go away, no matter how many times you solved them. Elena Vasquez stood in the ruins of what used to be the University of Chicago, now humanity's most important research facility. Around her, scientists from a dozen species worked together in ways that hadn't been seen in the galaxy for 50,000 years. The Devourers had been fighting human forces for 3 months, and everyone was beginning to understand that this war was different from all previous cycles. Dr. Vasquez, called First Scholar Zeth Cree, the vegan researcher who had helped humanity translate the ancient archives. His species was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer when he was excited. "We have found something extraordinary." Elena walked over to his workstation, where holographic displays showed energy patterns and temporal mathematics that hurt her head to look at directly. "What is it?" "The Devourers are not winning as easily as they expected," Zeth Cree explained. "Our combined analysis of all battles shows that they are using 47% more energy than in previous cycles." Dr. Kim looked up from her own console. "That matches what I've been seeing. Every time they encounter human tactics, they have to completely recalculate their approach. But there's something else." Elena waited as Dr. Kim pulled up new data. The Devourers exist in multiple time states simultaneously. They win battles by making victory impossible to imagine. But humans keep imagining victory anyway, even after suffering terrible defeats. So they're having to use extra energy to maintain their temporal paradox. Every time a human ship refuses to accept defeat, the Devourers have to work harder to keep reality stable around their victories. Elena felt a spark of understanding. "They're getting tired." Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. "All research teams, report to the main briefing room. We have new intelligence from the front lines." The briefing room was crowded with beings from species that had been hiding for months. The sight would have been impossible just a year ago. Representatives from dozens of civilizations working together on a single project. Admiral Chen stood at the front of the room, looking tired but determined. "Captain Torres has just returned from the Altair system with important information." Captain Torres, who had been promoted after surviving the destruction of his ship at Wolf 359, stepped forward. "The Devourers have begun behaving differently. Instead of their usual pattern of systematic consumption, they're concentrating most of their forces against human fleets." "Why?" Elena asked. "Because humans are the only species that's actively hunting them instead of hiding or running. Every other species in galactic history either fled immediately or fought defensive wars, but humans keep seeking out devourer fleets and attacking them." First, Scholar Zeth Cree spoke up. "This is unprecedented. In all our historical records, the fighting species always waited for the Devourers to attack them." Admiral Chen nodded. "Which brings us to our next phase. Dr. Vasquez, to report on your analysis of the ancient archives." Elena stood up, feeling the weight of dozens of alien eyes watching her. "We've discovered that the Devourers don't just consume matter and energy. They consume the concept of progress itself. They make it so civilizations never reached their potential." She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's history. "But they do this by existing in a temporal loop. They win battles by having already won them in the future. Their victory is a fixed point that they maintain through massive energy expenditure. How massive? Asked Dr. Kim. According to our calculations, maintaining their temporal paradox for an entire galactic cycle requires them to consume the total energy output of 50 star systems. The room went quiet. Elena continued. But that's for a normal cycle where most species flee and one species fights defensively. They never planned for a scenario where the fighting species actively hunts them, while other species provide support. Admiral Chen smiled. Which means we might be able to break their energy budget. An Altarian commander raised one of his forearms. How do we do that? Elena looked around the room at the faces of beings whose ancestors had fled from the Devourers for countless cycles. We do what humans do best. We refuse to accept that the problem is unsolvable. Dr. Kim activated her own display. The Devourers win by making defeat inevitable. But humans have a unique trait. We treat inevitable defeat as a challenge to overcome. More than that, Elena added. We've been analyzing human history and comparing it to the histories of other species. Every other civilization in the galaxy has had golden ages, periods of peace, prosperity, and rapid advancement. And humans? Zethkri asked. Humans have never had a golden age. We've been fighting extinction events, natural disasters, wars, and hostile conditions since we first evolved. We're the only species in the galaxy that developed civilization while constantly facing existential threats. Admiral Chen took over the explanation. The Devourers consume the possibility of progress. But human progress has always been achieved, despite impossible odds. We're not just fighting them, we're doing exactly what we've always done. Elena felt excitement building as the pieces came together. The Devourers maintain their temporal paradox by ensuring that fighting them is logically hopeless. But humans don't fight logically. We fight emotionally, Dr. Kim added. We fight because we're angry, or stubborn, or curious, or just because someone told us we couldn't win. Captain Torres laughed. You're saying our greatest weakness is actually our strength? I'm saying, Elena replied, that the Devourers have never encountered a species that gets more determined the more hopeless a situation becomes. Admiral Chen activated the fleet communication system. All ships, all species, this is Admiral Chen with a new battle plan. We're going to do something that no previous cycle has ever attempted. The plan was insane by any reasonable standard. Instead of fighting to win battles, humanity would fight to force the Devourers to expend maximum energy. Human ships would seek out enemy fleets specifically to lose in the most annoying ways possible. Other species would provide support, intelligence, and most importantly, hope. The final battle began 6 months later, when human long-range sensors detected the Devourer main fleet approaching the Sol system. Every mobile human ship met them at the edge of the solar system, along with volunteer vessels from 43 different species. But this time, the battle was different. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourers, humanity fought to exhaust them. Ships rammed enemy vessels and self-destructed. Others flew impossible attack patterns that forced the Devourers to constantly recalculate their responses. Some ships did nothing but broadcast messages of hope and defiance across all frequencies. And for the first time in 50,000 years, something unexpected happened. The Devourers began to slow down. Their energy expenditure is exceeding sustainable levels. Dr. Kim reported from Earth. The temporal paradox is becoming unstable. Elena watched the battle displays from the emergency command center. Thousands of human ships were being destroyed, but each loss forced the Devourers to work harder to maintain their grip on reality. Then, 47 hours into the battle, Admiral Chen gave the order that changed galactic history. All species, all ships, attack now. Show them that hope is contagious. Ships that had been hiding for months suddenly emerged from every asteroid, moon, and gas giant in the solar system. Species that hadn't fought alongside each other for millennia coordinated their attacks. The Centauri Federation revealed advanced weapons they had been saving for centuries. The Altarians deployed faster-than-light tactics nobody knew they possessed. But most importantly, They all fought with something they had forgotten they had: the absolute certainty that defeat was not an option. Elena watched the energy readings as the Devourer temporal paradox finally collapsed. For the first time in millions of years, beings that had always won were facing the possibility of loss, and they couldn't handle it. The Devourers didn't die or explode. Their ships began to fade as the energy required to maintain their existence became more than they could provide. Within hours, the beings that had consumed thousands of civilizations were reduced to normal entropy, still dangerous, but no longer inevitable. The communication networks came back online throughout the galaxy, carrying a single message that every species could understand. The stars remember how to sing. Elena stood in her rebuilt office 6 months later, watching reports from across the galaxy. Civilizations were emerging from hiding, rebuilding, and most importantly, working together in ways they never had before. Admiral Chen joined her at the window overlooking Earth's orbital shipyards, where vessels from dozens of worlds were being constructed side by side. "So what happens now?" he asked. Elena smiled. "Now we do what humans have always done. We explore, we learn, we argue with each other, and we get ready for whatever impossible problem the universe throws at us next. And if the Devourers come back, then we'll be waiting for them. All of us, together." Admiral Chen nodded. The galaxy learned something important from humans. "What's that?" "That the only unwinnable war is the one you don't fight." Elena looked out at the stars, which seemed brighter now than they had in months. Humanity had given the galaxy something more valuable than victory. They had given them back their ability to believe that victory was possible. And in a universe full of impossible challenges, that belief might be the most dangerous weapon of all.